Let's delve into this a little more. I'm joined by Darren Olivier, Director of the African Defence Review. Mr. Olivier, thank you so much for your time. Before we get into what the Defence Force is going to be doing, you know, the Police Minister has been very clear that this, he believes, is much more than looting and anger over the incarceration of Jacob Zuma. We have also seen water, power, communication infrastructure targeted. We've seen attacks on fuel, food and medicine. We've seen the N3 and trucks attacked. Do you believe that this boils down to an insurrection which is defined as an uprising against an authority or government?
Yes, I do believe so. It certainly seems that way. I mean, the level of coordination, and as you mentioned, the kinds of targets that were hit, is just extremely unusual for a spontaneous outbreak. Of course, there was some element of spontaneous additions to this and follow-ons as people saw the opportunity and added to it. But I definitely believe there is some evidence of this being insurrection and being organised.
Do you think that we're still at risk? And I ask that because 25,000 troops have now been deployed. 10,000 of them are on the ground. Some people are saying, oh, well, that's a bit too late. And I'm wondering if they're coming in now because there's still a risk, or if they're coming in now because the government realises we're going to have days, weeks of disruption due to the supply chain problems.
I think it's a bit of both. So I think on the one hand, it's an element almost of panic by government, understanding how close they've come to losing control. At the same time, though, we cannot rest and think that the current level of inactivity will last, especially if it is coordinated, as we believe. Then yes, there's every chance that we'll have further attacks, further incidents, and there is no way that we can rest and kind of send the troops back into their barracks and the police back. So there's definitely a risk of further flare-ups and further issues. Plus, of course, something like this doesn't just stop immediately. There will be flare-ups for days, if not weeks after this.
It was really interesting what Picky Hrif from the SA National Defence Union said in Barry Bateman's package, and I'll quote. He says, there's a very significant shift from the deployment we've seen in the past week. Soldiers are very clearly told in the government gazette they're able to defend themselves. Also, soldiers have the right to arrest. Is that significant, bearing in mind that initially the soldiers are there to help the police? Now they seem to be taking at least an equal role.
Sure. So, I mean, under the existing legal authorities that are given to soldiers when deploying alongside police, that's not that unusual. That is generally in line with past, with the legal authority given. But he is right that traditionally, at least, the rules of engagements and code of conduct have tended to be a bit more limited in their approach. So this is definitely a fairly robust code of conduct, one that allows the troops to operate more or less independently, and at least not have to rely entirely on the police being around them in order to do their work.
How different?
Of course, I think. Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say, how different is this to having to declare a state of emergency? I mean, shouldn't we have declared a state of emergency? Isn't it actually setting up a legal framework to have more transparency about how the military behave?
I don't believe so. I think a state of emergency is such an extreme step. I think the level of power it gives the state is incredibly high, and I don't think we need it. The problem we face is not one of legal authority. The SANDF and the police have more than enough legal authority to do their work under the current system and current rules. The issue is capacity. I mean, the police collapsed. We didn't have enough of them. They ran out of ammunition. The army, was initially deployed in fairly low numbers. So I don't believe there's any need or any benefit that we can gain from a state of emergency compared to what we have right now.
There's already quite a clear sign that actually a big part of what the military is going to do is make sure that there's safe passage for the transportation of fuel and food, particularly to KwaZulu-Natal. Where do you think we're going to see the most of the military in the coming days?
Sure. So one of the key roles that's been given to them is to start clearing up routes. So, for example, 5 SA infantry has begun clearing the N3 out of their base in Ladysmith. We have seen the military deployed around national key points, around oil refineries and factories and all the rest. So we're definitely going to see, I think, a very, very prominent role in terms of protecting that infrastructure and being able to open up the routes and make sure that goods can flow again. And I think that'll be as important, if not more so, than the patrols that people normally see.
Very quickly, do you think that they're going to be almost performing humanitarian assistance as well with these food shortages?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if we look at how dialysis and how close we are to things right now, especially in this economy where things are just in time, then yes, if the food doesn't get transported, people will starve.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. I do appreciate it. That was Darren Olivier, Director of the African Defence Review. Still ahead.